Insomniatic remains. When I was younger, I used to spend summers at my grandparents' house in the countryside. They had a big, old farmhouse with a lot of land and a big barn that my grandfather used for storage. One summer, when I was about 10 years old, I was playing outside when I heard a strange noise coming from the barn. It sounded like something was moving around inside, even though I knew no one had been in there for weeks. Curiosity getting the best of me, I walked over to the barn and peeked inside. It was dark and musty, but I could see something moving in the shadows. I thought it might be a stray animal, so I took a few steps closer. As I got closer, I saw that it wasn't an animal at all. It was a man, dressed in rags and covered in dirt. He looked up at me with wild, desperate eyes and started to come toward me. I ran back to the house as fast as I could, screaming for my grandfather. When he came outside, we went back to the barn together, but the man was gone. We never found out who he was or how he got into the barn, but the incident left a lasting impression on me. It was a terrifying reminder that sometimes danger can lurk where you least expect it. When I was in college, I rented a small studio apartment in a big city. The building was old and had a lot of history, but I didn't think much of it at the time. One night, I woke up to the sound of footsteps outside my door. They were slow and deliberate, like someone was pacing back and forth. I assumed it was just a neighbor, so I tried to go back to sleep. But the footsteps continued, and they started to get louder. It sounded like the person was getting closer and closer to my door. Suddenly, the doorknob started to turn. I was frozen with fear, unable to move or scream. But then, just as suddenly as it had started, the footsteps stopped, and the doorknob stopped turning. I didn't sleep at all that night. The next morning, I asked my neighbors if they had heard anything strange the night before. They all said no. A few days later, I mentioned the incident to the building manager. He got a strange look on his face and told me that the building had a history of unexplained occurrences. He said that the studio apartment I was renting had been vacant for a long time before I moved in because no one wanted to stay there for very long. I moved out of the apartment shortly after that. I never heard the footsteps again, but the memory of that night has stayed with me.